Turn to page 8. Representative Bernstine calls up House Bill 2030, printer number 3009, page 8 of today's House calendar. The clerk will read a summary of the bill.
This bill amends Title 8 to standardize the process for billing municipal electric customers in boroughs situated in more than one county.
I see 3 amendments that have been filed, 6062, 6327, and I believe, if I'm reading it correctly, 6340. We call up 6062 by Representative Harper. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment.
Amendment A 06062 eliminates all major provisions of the bill while retaining some of the consumer protections provided for borough electric customers in all boroughs which are electric providers.
On the amendment, Representative Harper is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I rose before you called the amendment to make a procedural motion.
Oh, you may proceed. Please state your motion.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this bill deals with boroughs that sell electricity, and a companion bill by the same sponsor is in the House Local Government Committee, which has had a hearing thereon, which exposed that in addition to helping certain consumers, the bill will also raise real estate taxes in boroughs. For that reason, Mr. Speaker, because we are working through those issues with the prime sponsor, I would rise to make a motion that this bill, a Title 53 Municipalities Bill, a Borough Code amendment, be sent to the Local Government Committee, which is familiar with this law.
Does anybody else wish to speak on the motion? Yes, Representative Bernstine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill has passed before the State Government Committee. Additionally, this has been vetted. We have had numerous conversations on this. I would respectfully request the members to vote no on this motion.
Representative Freeman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion by the lady, Ms. Harper, from Montgomery County. As was stated, a similar bill, very, very similar bill, is in the Local Government Committee. It had a hearing in which many of the problems with the bill were brought before the members of the committee. It is still being looked at and worked at in that committee. This version also amends the Borough Code. The Borough Code, as a point of jurisdiction, belongs in the House Local Government Committee. It should not have been sent to the State Government Committee. So it is only appropriate that it be recommitted to the Local Government Committee so that we can continue our work on it and deal with the problems that are entailed in both this bill and the bill that's in the committee. I would further note that the Boroughs Association and the Pennsylvania Municipal Electric Association have both urged the House to vote to recommit to the Local Government Committee for us to continue our work on this proposal. I would urge the members to vote for the motion to recommit.
Representative Pam Snyder on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this legislation deals with one particular community. I know the prime sponsor has been working diligently on this issue. I, too, am a co-sponsor of this legislation, and I would ask for a negative vote to recommit. Thank you.
Representative John Marr on the motion to recommit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I read both the bill that's before us and the bill that the gentlelady referred to, and they're really very different legislation. And it may well be that as a result of the hearings that were held by her committee, that this bill, which is very different and maybe learned something from those hearings, emerged from the State Government Committee and is before us. I would urge us to proceed and not to recommit.
On the issue of recommittal, those in favor of recommitting the bill from or to local government will be voting aye. Those opposed to the motion to recommit will be voting nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 105, the yeas are 83. The motion to recommit fails. We now call up Amendment 6062. We've already had the summary of that read. On the amendment, we recognize Representative Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman who sponsored this bill is trying to help some consumers who are having a problem with a particular electric utility in the borough of Elwood City. What my amendment does is leaves those protective provisions in place. Other boroughs that sell electricity are not having these problems and have these protections in place. So it's not a problem for anyone to do this. So I've left those protections in place to take care of those people that the representative is trying to aid. However, his bill goes further. His bill would say that no borough can use money earned through the electric utility for general purposes, police, fire, or anything else. The problem with that is that it will most assuredly raise real estate taxes if the borough cannot use its electric utility money for the purpose of helping to defray real estate taxes. As many of you know, most of our boroughs are at least 100 to 150 years old. They have an older tax base and are often the place where they have tax-exempt properties because as the center of a rural community, they have churches, they have hospitals, and they have universities. They are tax-exempt properties. So the burden of these greatly increased taxes will fall on the people who live there, including the seniors who just want to stay in their own homes. My amendment takes out that part of this bill, but leaves in the bill the protections for the seniors from any arbitrary shutoffs when their electric bills are not paid. With my amendment, this bill would be of benefit to the folks who live in Elwood City, but would not hurt the folks who live in Elwood City. It's been estimated that their real estate taxes would rise by 70% if this bill passes. 70%. And as a result of that, this would not help the constituents the representative is trying to help. Whereas if my amendment were entered into the bill, it would. So I would ask you to please vote for my amendment, which would take out the problems associated with the bill and that were very well revealed in the hearing that we held on the concept, and still keep the consumer protections in place for the residents of Elwood City who are purchasing electricity there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Bernstine on the bill or on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would request that members vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote. Representative Freeman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in favor of the Harper Amendment. As the good lady has stated, this is probably the best of both worlds. It leaves intact the ability of Elwood City to use its electric rate revenues to make sure that property taxes stay low in that city, while at the same time putting in all the consumer protections, which are part of the best practices advocated by the Pennsylvania Municipal Electrical Association. So you get your consumer protections in the bill with this amendment, but you also allow the flexibility for that municipality who should decide for themselves and for their own residents whether they would prefer to see those electric rates used to keep their property taxes down. Many people in this chamber want to see property taxes come down. If you want to apply that same principle to Elwood City, you want to vote for the Harper Amendment. I urge a yes vote.
All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? And the clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 98, the nays are 90, excuse me. The amendment passes. The next amendment, 6327, offered by Representative Harper. The clerk will read a summary of the amendment.
A06327 eliminates all major provisions of the bill while retaining some of the consumer protections provided for borough electric customers in boroughs situated in more than one county.
On the amendment, Representative Harper.
I'll withdraw that amendment. Thank you.
The amendment is withdrawn. Representative Freeman offers 6340. The clerk will read a summary of the amendment.
Amendment A06340 permits boroughs to charge electric rates to pay their general operating costs if the borough's tax rate has not exceeded 50% of the statutory limitation on millage rates in the borough code.
Representative Freeman on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in light of the passage of the previous Harper amendment, I will withdraw my amendment at this time.
Okay, the amendment is withdrawn. Representative Cutler and Representative Mustio have filed a motion to reconsider amendment. And this is the motion. They move that the vote by which Amendment 6062 to House Bill 2030, printer number 3009, was passed. They want that to be reconsidered on this April 11th. Again, it's signed by Representatives Brian Cutler and Mark Mustio. So we have a motion to reconsider the vote on Amendment 6062 in front of us. On the motion to reconsider, Representative Cutler. On the motion to reconsider, followed by Representative Mustio, followed by Representative Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd urge the members to support the motion to reconsider so that some additional comments can be made on the underlying amendment. Thank you.
Representative Mark Mustio on the motion to reconsider. Waves off. Representative Harper on the motion to reconsider.
Members, Mr. Speaker, as you know, I tried to put this bill back into the local government committee so that it could have more discussion, and the membership thought you were ready to vote today. I respect that decision. I think you were ready to vote today. My amendment saves what is good about the Bernstine bill and takes care of the consumers in Elwood City Borough that he is worried about. What it does not do is force the borough of Elwood City to raise property taxes by 70%. That's what happens if the bill is unamended. Please turn down the reconsideration. And please stay with me on this, because this bill does what the prime sponsor wants as amended, but does not require a 70% increase in real estate taxes. Thank you.
Representative Freeman on the motion to reconsider. Representative Freeman, do you wish to speak on the motion to reconsider?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd urge a no vote on the motion to reconsider. I think that the House acted wisely when they included the Harper Amendment. I think we're establishing best practices, which the Pennsylvania Municipal Electrical Association has advocated for, and we have not touched the ability of Elwood City, or any borough for that matter, to be able to utilize their electric rate revenues to fund their general operating funds in an effort to keep their property taxes down. So I would urge a no vote on the motion to reconsider.
Representative Mustillo on the motion to reconsider.
Mr. Speaker, I would encourage members to vote for reconsideration. The bill languished in another committee. The other bill that sits in the other committee could have been amended with this amendment in the other committee. It was not. The member proactively sought to get a bill passed that will have great impact on his district, only his district. And to sit here and do sound bites of 70%, to throw that out as that's going to intimidate somebody in here, I think is ridiculous. If the gentleman from the western part of the state wants to get this bill passed to help his district, we should do that. And if he then is going to work with his local elected officials to make sure their municipality is run more effectively and efficiently so that they aren't gouging senior citizens on their electric bill to pay for expenses and run amok by passing that amendment into the bill is not going to help. He wants to clean up the local municipality, and let's give him the tools to do that. Just as if you came here and wanted to clean up one of your local municipalities, we'd want to help you do that the same. Thank you.
All those in favor of a motion to reconsider will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 104. The nays are 84. The motion to reconsider passes. We have in front of us Amendment 6062. On the amendment, Representative Harper is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Municipalities that sell electricity have been in the business of selling electric for probably 100 years because they first got into it when electricity and streetlights were brand new and the boroughs, being the towns, wanted to have streetlights. Most municipalities that sell electric sell it well, do a good job, watch out for consumers, but unlike for-profit companies who have executives who get six-figure salaries, most boroughs do not. And unlike for-profit companies that send the money that they make on electric out to shareholders, boroughs do not. Instead, they use it for the residents and property owners in the borough to help keep their property taxes down. They pay for police, they pay for fire, they pay for emergency services, they pay for roads, they pay for bridges, and they take care of things at home. If they did not have the revenues from their electric department, they would have to raise property taxes. We don't actually give boroughs too many options. That's about it. They have to raise property taxes, and I know many of you are worried about us doing things here that cause property taxes back home to go up. This bill, unamended, causes property taxes to go up by a staggering amount. In addition, if a municipality cannot sell electricity and is set up for it, owns the poles, may own the generation, or have contracts for it, they can still sell electric, but they are not going to get the benefit of it that our for-profit companies get. And if there's a problem with the local government and the way they sell electric, vote them out. In fact, 2 members of the Borough Council of Elwood City were voted out. Apparently, on the way they run their electric system, okay? That's how we do it. Unlike for-profit companies, these boroughs meet in public, discuss rates in public, listen to the citizens in public, and they'll be listening to the citizens as well when it comes time to balance their budget and they have to double their property taxes because they don't have the revenues from the electric department. With my amendment, we get the protections for the consumers, but we don't run the risk of spikes in property taxes that will never go down and will drive some seniors out of the homes they have lived in for many years. My amendment was a good improvement on the bill, and it's probably something we could have done in local government committee had Mr. Bernstine not immediately after the hearing moved the venue. Please vote for the Harper amendment because it does what he needs, takes care of the seniors on fixed incomes, and it will not cause an immediate and irrevocable spike in property taxes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Freeman on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for the arguments that were stated before on behalf of this amendment, it provides for keeping the ability of boroughs that do provide electricity to their residents, the ability to use those revenues to underwrite the cost of their operating, their general operating. That keeps property taxes down. So what the good lady has offered in her amendment, which has been put into the bill by the previous vote, would just simply leave the consumer protections which were part of the original proposal to make sure that best practices were followed and how the borough would operate its electric obligations to the consumers within that community. But what's important is, with her language, we keep in place the ability of a municipality to have the right to use those revenues to keep their property taxes down. If we take this out, and if the bill in chief passes in its original form, then it's going to cause an increase in property taxes in those communities that utilize their electric rates and revenues as a means to keep property taxes down. I urge the House to stick by the Harper Amendment and vote yes on the Harper Amendment.
Representative John Marr.
I don't understand why such a simple bill can be so confusing to people, including the maker of this amendment. This bill does not affect these other electric providers, local governments, as has been suggested. It only affects those that operate in more than one county, which is one. So if you've been led to believe that this bill, without this amendment, affects any of your communities, stop worrying. It does not. And while I think it's noble from those in the Southeast to want to tell those in the Southwest the better way to do things, and we appreciate that input up here regularly, I think we ought to defer to those from the Southwest to decide what is best there, because this doesn't affect anybody else. Doesn't affect anybody else. Let's be respectful. Don't be confused. This bill doesn't affect your communities. Let's be respectful of those who represent that area and vote to defeat this amendment so they can take care of their neighbors the way you would want to take care of yours.
Representative Harper.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
You may proceed.
Although it is hard to believe in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that calling someone from the Southeast is an ad hominem attack, it is. I would ask that the gentleman be cautioned against ad hominem attacks while we are trying to debate an issue.
Representative Marr, on the request for an admonition.
If the gentlelady is offended to be referred to as being from the southeast of Pennsylvania, I will certainly withdraw the characterization of her representing the southeast. I am never embarrassed to say that I represent the southwest.
All members, please refer. Remember that Pennsylvania is one state, and if we could make sure that there are no implied or direct criticisms. I don't know, in some ways this one is in the eye of the beholder or the ear of the beholder, but if we could recognize we all represent our own districts, but we also have the interests of the Commonwealth in place, although I understand this legislation does apply to a particular area. Does anybody else wish to be recognized on the amendment before Representative Bernstine, because he's the maker of the bill? I would also recognize the maker of the amendment again. But does anybody else wish to be recognized other than the maker of the amendment or the maker of the bill? If you do, I will call on you, but I'm going to let the maker of the amendment and the maker of the bill speak last. Representative Bernstine, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what this amendment does is it does keep some provisions, some protection provisions in place. But I want to be clear about this amendment. And this amendment is, or this legislation, we've had several groups and vetted this with several outside groups that have also in support of this. Those groups include, that have also asked for the rejection of all amendments, include the AARP. They include the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce, the two Chamber of Commerces in our area, Beaver County and Lawrence County, the PA Manufacturers Association, the Realtors Association. They also include our friends in labor from SEIU 32BJ, who are also supportive and are helpful in getting this legislation passed, as well as the PA Catholic Conference. What this amendment does not do is just as important as what it does do. Those groups are in support because of this, but this amendment does not do the following. It does not limit security deposits for those that are impoverished. It does not have those does not talk about how long those security deposits can be held. It does not force payment arrangements for those that are in poverty and can no longer afford their bills. It does not leave termination. It does not have it allows for termination for those that are over 65 years of age and under 12 years of age. To be clear, that means a 5-year-old in a home can have their electric shut off, or an 80-year-old can't have their oxygen tank charged, which people have come to our office to do. The most egregious on this is the following, and that's that this actually takes out a provision. If you listen closely, this is amazing. This takes out a provision that would call for the good faith to contact people whose electric was terminated, meaning they don't even need to send them a letter and let them know where to come and return on their electric. Mr. Speaker, with the groups, once again, that are supporting this, this has been fully vetted. This is a good common sense consumer protection bill that should be absolutely bipartisan, with our friends in labor also supporting it from 32BJ, folks like the AARP, as well as pro-business groups. We're hopeful that we can reject this and move this forward to protect citizens of Elwood City Borough. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the amendment, does Representative Harper wish to be recognized? A member had informed me that there's probably some tension in the air because of this Flyer Penguin game coming up. I'm for both teams. Does anybody else wish to speak on this particular amendment? All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? There's a couple of members that have not voted. And the clerk will record the vote. The nays are 119, the yeas are 68. The amendment does not pass. Representative Barbin had requested to be placed on leave. I apologize. I had not said that, although I do believe that that was denoted on the board. Representative Barbin had requested to be placed on leave. Yes, Representative Harper, for what purpose do you stand?
Procedural motion, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you. Without my amendment, I believe that this bill is unconstitutional as special legislation. I'm citing Section 307 of the Pennsylvania Constitution because notice of local and special bills shall not be passed unless there has been publication at least 30 days prior in the General Assembly, and under Section 332 of the Constitution, that the General Assembly shall not pass any local or special law regulating the affairs of counties, cities, townships, wards, boroughs, or school districts. Case law has interpreted that to mean that unless the classification is logical, it is special legislation and unconstitutional. In this case, the prime sponsor of the bill represents two different boroughs that sell electricity and has only chosen to manage the affairs of one of them. I believe that the bill, as it currently stands, is unconstitutional under those two provisions of the Pennsylvania Constitution, and several people who spoke today have explicitly stated that the bill only applies to the borough of Elwood City.
The gentlelady, Representative Harper, raises the point of order that Bill number 2030 is unconstitutional. Under Rule 4, the Speaker is required to submit questions affecting the constitutionality of a bill to the House for decision, which the chair now does, and recognizes Representative Harper. I know she has spoken at length on the motion. Typically you state it and then you state your reason, but that's fine. Representative Harper, do you wish to make any other points on the motion at this time?
I would just briefly state, Mr. Speaker, that this is local government week in Pennsylvania. We recently unanimously voted to recognize that we have jurisdiction different than our local governments, and that our local governments, government of the neighbors, by the neighbors, and for the neighbors, has certain responsibilities. And we don't get elected to come out here and tell our borough councils what to do. Particularly not a single borough council who is similarly situated to another borough council in the same district as the prime sponsor. This bill is special legislation, and special legislation under the Pennsylvania Constitution requires special notice. Special notice. It didn't even get regular notice in the State Government Committee. And it also requires that it not be narrowly tailored to tell some borough council how to run the borough. And that is exactly what this bill is doing to Elwood City. I would ask the members to please vote that it is unconstitutional, so that someday you're not forced to stand up here and defend your own township or borough from some overreaching legislator who wants to tell them what to do, but who didn't run for borough council, because the pay's not as good as ours is.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, to the majority leader, please.
I'm not sure what classification it's going to fall under, so I'm going to start with a point of order.
Yes.
But I would ask that the lady from Montgomery County's last several sentences be stricken from the record. They were a direct attack at the gentleman from, I don't know, Beaver County, whatever county he may happen to come from. They were a direct attack, and they are completely inappropriate on the House floor.
My understanding, I am going to provide this admonition. Listen, I just need to reference the rules for a second because I want to cite the specific provision. I'm going to need, we're going to be at ease for just a few minutes. We're going to be at ease. I understand, but we're going to be at ease. I need to review both what was exactly stated on the record and the rule. I need to review both.
He won't recognize me.
We are back in order. Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure, which our rules refer to, Section 124, personalities not permitted in debate, in particular, subsection 3. It is not the person, but the measure that is the subject of debate, and it is not allowable to arraign the motives of a member, but the nature or consequences of a measure may be condemned in strong terms. Well, we've certainly had that. I mean, the last time I looked, it is published in statute what we get paid. I do not think that is appropriate for reference to another member. I will call upon Representative Harper at this time, but the leader's admonition, I think, is appropriate. You may proceed, Representative Harper.
Mr. Speaker, I've been standing at this mic for 5 minutes in order to retract that statement and was not recognized.
No,
I will retract that statement. I'm trying to retract it, Mr. Speaker.
Well, you know what? We were going to rule on it because it was so out of line. And for the record, it needs to be set forth in the record. So I'm glad that you retracted it. It will be stricken from the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the issue of constitutionality, who wishes else to speak? It's one time per person. John Marr, Representative Marr, on constitutionality.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is quite clearly not special legislation as contemplated by the Constitution. There is a logical reason for grouping these municipalities that overlap county lines when they happen to host a municipal electrical operator. And the reason is very simple. The appeals process provided is through county courts. And there needs to be guidance as to when a municipality is in two counties, which county courts would be involved. And for that reason, we have this legislation crafted dealing with municipalities which are in two counties. There's not many of them, to be sure, But if the question of an appeal comes up, there needs to be some clarity about how that should be conducted. And at the moment in time, it is correct. So far as I'm aware, there's only one of these municipalities that happens to host an electrical operator, but any of the others could. And we often write laws in anticipation not just of those who they affect today, but those who might be similarly situated as time goes on. So this legislation is quite clearly in bounds of our Constitution, and I would ask that you recognize it as such with your vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does anybody else wish to speak on constitutionality? Representative Bernstine, you wish to speak on constitutionality? You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we talk about constitutionality, it says that a statute may be unconstitutional if it is a closed class of one member. Mr. Speaker, this is not a closed class. At present, there are 12 boroughs which cross county lines, and at present, there are 35 boroughs that were provided electricity for their residents. While I am aware of only one borough which crosses county lines and currently provides electric to its residents, any one of the other 11 boroughs which cross county lines could enter this class. Therefore, it is not a closed class of one member.
On the issue of constitutionality, those who will be voting aye will vote to declare the bill is constitutional. Those voting no will be voting to declare the bill to be unconstitutional. Members will now proceed to vote. Representative Ward has requested to be placed on leave. Without objection, that will be granted. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The yeas are 128, the nays are 58. The bill has been voted by the House to be constitutional. Representative Freeman had withdrawn. Given the fact that the Harper Amendment had originally passed, his amendment was in fact out of order, and he had been informed as such, and then withdrawn because the other amendment had gone in. Then there was a motion to reconsider, which passed, and then we voted again on the amendment, and the amendment failed. So Representative Freeman is in order in bringing up his amendment to the bill. And can you give me the amendment number, please? It's 6340 is the amendment number is 6340. The clerk will read a summary of that amendment, please.
A 06340 permits boroughs to charge electric rates to pay their general operating costs if the borough's tax rate has not exceeded 50% of the statutory limitation on millage rates in the borough code.
Representative Freeman on the amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first, thank you for your ruling on my amendment. I appreciate the chair's ruling. To inform the members of the content of my amendment, it's very simple, and I think a reasonable compromise given the issue we have before us. Everything in Representative Bernstine's bill would stay in place. The one change that my amendment offers, or two changes. First, the municipality of Elwood City, like all other boroughs that provide for electricity to the residents, would continue to be able to use those proceeds for general operating costs of the municipality. That's an important consideration because by doing that, they can keep their property taxes down. The second provision of my amendment would state that that can only continue as such if Elwood City would never go above 50%, or actually would never go above 50% of the allowable millage under the borough code. So we are putting in place with my amendment a caveat that states, yes, you can continue to use your electric revenue for general operating. We recognize that that keeps your property taxes low. But if you should ever choose to try and raise your property taxes, they could never go beyond the 50% mark because of what's in this amendment. I think that is a fair compromise. It allows the flexibility that a borough like Elwood City would need to utilize its electric revenues to keep their property taxes down, but it also places a potential cap that if they ever exceed that cap, then they would lose the ability to use those electric revenues for their general operating costs. I ask the House to please embrace this compromise and to vote yes on the amendment.
Representative Bernstine on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would ask you to oppose this amendment and once again remind you that as we worked through the process and worked on negotiating this language with several of the other interest groups, once again, including AARP, our friends in labor at SEIU 32BJ, and our friends in business at the Pennsylvania Chamber, as well as many, many others. They believe that this would harm the bill just as I do, and I would once again request that folks reject this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Freeman, for the second time, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, far from harming the bill, I think this makes it for a better bill. It achieves some of the goals that the gentleman who's the prime sponsor wanted to achieve in regards to how Elwood City operates. But it also keeps intact the ability of Elwood City to use their electric revenues to keep their property taxes down. And should they ever try to exceed having their millage go beyond 50% of what's allowed under the Borough Code, they would lose that right. So it is the best of both worlds. And I urge the House to please embrace and vote for this reasonable compromise on this issue. Thank you.
Representative Bernstine, for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this actually harms one of the main components of the bill. And the reason for that, and I appreciate the good gentleman working on an idea, but we have a cost issue as well that's occurring there. And I'll give you a very specific example, and that is, you may need to hold on to your seats for this, but there was an $82.99 bill that was sent out for electricity. But the only thing is, that's not just a month, that was for 2 days. For 2 days, a resident received a bill for $82.99. So it's very important that people have this necessity, which is electricity, in order to live their lives. While it may keep some of those other protections in place, it does not keep the protection in place to keep them from being overcharged. And it is very difficult for people to manage their lives for something that's a necessity, such as electricity.
Does anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote. The nays are 114. The yeas are 72. The amendment does not pass. I do not see any other amendments. If I'm mistaken, please correct me. If any member has another amendment they wish to call up, please let me know. At this time, I see no further amendments. Will the House agree to the bill? It is agreed to. The bill will move from second to third consideration.